Hey guys, it's Sasha. The stock market continues crashing down in a vertical line this morning, the third business day in a row after Donald Trump announced his tariffs. After already falling over 10% on Thursday and Friday, the stock market is down another 3% in pre-market trading as I'm recording this video. By the time you're watching this, it'll probably have moved up 5% or down 5% or maybe both. And everybody is focused on the tariffs as the reason why the stock market is having one of its worst ever collapses in economic history. And, it is important, but I think the problem is actually a lot worse than that. And the bigger problem longer term is probably not even the tariffs themselves. And I want to talk about the real problem that is destroying the markets and will hit the US economy in this video, because I am not hearing anybody else talk about it. The thing with tariffs is that Donald Trump could go and change his mind any day. He has already announced and cancelled tariffs multiple times since becoming president 11 weeks ago, so it would not be something out of the ordinary. Although this time he does seem to be digging his heels in, and he has now backed himself into a corner that could be hard to get out of.
Well, the problem is that Europe has made a fortune.
Wait a second, let me cut the noise so we can actually hear what he's saying.
Well, the problem is that Europe has made a fortune with us. Europe also has had a tremendous surplus with the United States. Europe has treated us, it's a little smaller, but they've treated us very, very badly. China has, but Europe has also. Europe has been very, very bad to us. Europe has taken our leaders for a ride. They don't take our cars. They don't take our food products. They don't take anything. And we take their cars, Mercedes, Volkswagen, BMW. We take their millions of cars. They take no cars.
Well, that's not actually true. Tesla has been the highest selling vehicle in Europe in the last 2 years, and before Tesla, Ford has sold very large numbers of cars in Europe. The Ford Escort and then the Ford Fiesta are the top 2 selling cars in the UK in history of all time. Europe has absolutely nothing against buying American cars if those cars are good and match what the Europeans want. The reason Europe is not buying US cars in large volumes except for Tesla has nothing to do with tariffs. The reason is because American cars are extremely inefficient. Petrol prices in Europe are much higher than they are in the US. American cars are also generally much bigger, which is a problem for small roads in Europe. And American cars don't fit into standard parking spaces. And on top of that, American cars have a bad reputation for reliability. But anyway, it seems that Donald Trump is now deep into this new tariff announcement that can't really be backtracked out of. But let's talk about what the real problems are. The stock market is not the same as the economy. But the issue now is that there are very serious risks to the US economy. First up, the announcements by the White House about the trillions of dollars of investment as a result of these tariffs are unfortunately pretty much entirely bullshit. The numbers seem to come from things like that $500 billion pledge at the Trump inauguration by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank. The problem is that this was just a marketing play. It was just a bit of bullshit that they made up to go and get their faces next to Trump, to go and get some favor with the administration. It has nothing to do with reality. $500 billion is about 25 times the combined total amount of cash and cash equivalents that these companies have between them. So even if they really wanted to invest the money, they would need to raise insane, completely unprecedented amounts of money to do it, and that's not going to happen this year, next year, or in the next 5-year period. And if you go and look at what's happening in the stock market, good luck trying to raise any money out there on any reasonable grounds anytime soon. Companies like Microsoft have previously announced that they will be investing $80 billion a year, but $80 billion is basically the sum of Microsoft's capital expenditures and their R&D budget over the past year. So unless Microsoft is planning to go bankrupt, that figure of $80 billion a year is just the sum of their total BAU spending that could be classified as investment. It's money they were already always going to spend anyway, and not all of that money is being spent in the United States. But the truth is, why would a company actually go and spend hundreds of billions of dollars to move their production to the US? If you just really think about it, if you are a global manufacturer and you have your factory set up in China or Vietnam or wherever, That factory supplies the entire world. The US market is really important. Don't get me wrong, it's by far the biggest market in the world. But even for companies like Apple, the US market is smaller than the rest of the world put together. Only 42% of Apple's revenues come from the United States, and that ratio is falling. The rest of the world is increasing. So even if Apple decides to move all of their production for the US to the US, it would make absolutely zero sense for them to not retain the Chinese factories for the rest of the world, because it would be way cheaper instead of manufacturing phones in America for export. So the decision there would need to be to split manufacturing into multiple separate locations. There are a whole bunch of issues with that. Now, some big car companies, for example, and other companies already do that. But not only do you need to move the factory to do that, you would also need to move the whole supply chain. Otherwise, you are paying tariffs on importing all of the parts, and that would cancel out most of the benefit of moving the factory in the first place. So if Apple moves their iPhone factory, for example, to the United States, they also then need TSMC to move their factories, their fabs, to the US too. Now, TSMC is already building a US facility that will not do everything, but do some bits for some companies, but that started a long time ago, way before tariffs. It has nothing to do with tariffs. Apple would also need to then convince Micron and Qualcomm to move all of their manufacturing from Asia to the US, and they would need Sony to move their mobile camera production over from Japan, and they would need Sharp to go and move their screen manufacturing from China and Vietnam over to the United States, and Samsung will need to move their manufacturing to the United States from South Korea, and then they would also need to go and discover things like lithium, cobalt, tin, tungsten, gold reserves, things like that in the United States, some of these things not really available, and then go and start mining them, set up the entire operation, and then they would need to build the refineries to process the ore within the United States. They would need to do all of that. The reality is that modern manufacturing is extremely complex. It's very global in nature, and there are very good reasons why. Even if Apple wanted to move their production fully to the US, the cost would be astronomical, and in reality it would be close to impossible to actually achieve. Maybe a few headline companies will go and announce some new manufacturing facilities in the US. Maybe to get favor with the administration, maybe because it makes sense long term for them anyway, but the majority will not, because it is both not feasible in many cases and actually very, very expensive. And so the predominant outcome of these tariffs will just be much higher prices on iPhones and other products sold in the United States. And by the way, if you want to get my hot takes with no filter and get updates that don't make it into YouTube videos, just some of my thoughts, you can go and sign up to my completely free newsletter. All you have to do is go to my website, sashayanshin.com, and type in your email. It's that easy. And I'll send you my thoughts as and when there is something useful to share with you. Go and click the link in the video description and sign up. Anyway, let's talk about the big issue. Here is where I think it actually gets a lot worse. A couple of days ago, Marco Rubio posted this tweet that he is taking actions to revoke all visas held by South Sudanese passport holders and to restrict any further issuance to prevent entry into the United States effective immediately due to the failure of South Sudan's transitional government to accept the return of its repatriated citizens in a timely manner. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who genuinely support this kind of policy, but this is just another announcement in a series of issues which are going to severely dent the US economy in the long run. There has been a wave of news of people in the United States on various different visas, people who are not citizens having their visas cancelled because they posted something on social media that doesn't align with the views of the US government. Students have been arrested and deported because they went and protested, for example, against Israel. And you know what? That is what students do. They feel strongly about some random shit, some important shit, some not so important shit. They feel strongly about all kinds of stuff, and they go and protest. That is what students do. And sometimes they protest about stuff that you would have a difference of opinion on, and that's okay. But it is bizarre that a country that has always been so proud of waving the banner of free speech and freedom in general is now so happy to fuck people over because their views disagree with the views of the president. People who have done absolutely nothing wrong, broken no laws, can now become pawns because Donald Trump maybe has a political disagreement with the government of the country from where those people come from. And here is why this is extremely important. Over the last 25 years, the United States has been widely seen as the ultimate destination for the smartest and brightest talents in the world. If you lived anywhere outside the United States and you had the opportunity to move to the US and work there, you generally took it. Silicon Valley has grown on the back of hundreds of thousands of the smartest minds in the world moving to California to go and use their skills to build all of these companies up. A lot of entrepreneurs have chosen in the past to move to the US when the time was right. It was the destination of choice for all of these people. But now, if you are a business owner, if you are some kind of entrepreneur or a great developer or whatever, you can go and do everything right. You can do everything by the book. You go and spend $10,000 to get your visa. You invest in the United States. You go and set up your business maybe. You go and get a house. Your kids begin going to the school locally. You pay a whole load of taxes in the US because you become a resident. And then one day, you're walking down the street to work and some covert ICE operatives grab you and stick you in a van. And then you go to jail for 2 weeks before being deported because maybe you attended a protest. Or maybe you wrote something wrong on Facebook. Or maybe you made a YouTube video that disagreed with the White House policy. And you lose everything. You lose your livelihood, you lose everything that you've invested in the US, and maybe the next time that you're flying back to the US, after a break, maybe then you will be refused entry and your visa will be cancelled because of the same reasons. This sort of thing was not even a theoretical possibility not very long ago. Now it has become a very real risk. Would you want to move to a country where you have to be extremely careful about what you say? No, you wouldn't. And this is now a very serious risk because smart people will be looking at this and saying, you know what? I don't want to be limited in what I am allowed to think and what I am allowed to say. I don't want to live under a regime that can put me in prison because I happen to have a different point of view to the regime. If you want that, there are plenty of other countries with oppressive totalitarian regimes that you can move to. And what you're going to get is a massive slowdown in the number of these people moving to the US. They will stop bringing their money with them, they will stop bringing their businesses with them, they will stop creating new businesses, and they will stop creating jobs. They will stop adding to the total job creation, and they will stop pushing American industry forward. Sure, there is plenty of talent within the US. This is not the be-all, end-all, that's not the point I'm trying to make, but the rate of growth is going to slow down as the flow of brain power slows down. And it's not just the existing policies. It's the massively unpredictable future. Companies also hate uncertainty. Imagine you are a company owner. You go and spend billions building out a factory in the United States, and then the trade war that has just started gets so bad that you can't export anything from the United States to other countries. So your factory is then sitting there forever limited to only manufacturing goods for the US market only. Or imagine you spend those billions on building that new factory, and it takes you, say, 4 or 5 years, you build the factory, you move all the supply chains, and then in 4 years' time, there is a new administration in the White House. And they go and cancel these tariffs because their policies are different. So now you have spent all of those billions, and you have a factory that is extremely expensive and completely uncompetitive with factories in China, in Vietnam, and wherever on cost. So why would companies, after doing this thinking, take on the huge risk? The problem with this new policy is that it's not only killing the stock market in the short term, it's also going to press the brakes on US economy in the long term. And that impact could be a whole lot worse in the long run than what's happening today in the global markets. I know, hard to believe, but remember, if you want to get my unfiltered takes and updates, go and sign up to my free newsletter. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.